Students are joining. We'll wait for a minute and start. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to our weekly current affairs, where we will discuss the most important newspaper articles, columns of the week from various sources. And as discussed previously, we will be focusing on the prelims examination. Sure? Great. And if you are not attempting the weekly prelims test series, please do that. It's very important for you to not just gather information, but also apply it. You'll be making a lot of mistakes when it comes to the prelims test series, but it is better to make mistakes now than in the actual examination. So please attempt the prelims test series. Please. It's for your benefit. I get nothing in return. Or as an institution, we get nothing in return. But please, please, please attempt these tests. It's for your benefit. And if I want to spend hundreds of hours in telling you how important and significant it is to attempt these tests, I would still be left with something more to say. Please attempt the prelims test series. Please. If not of Byju's, of any Jews for that matter, but please attempt the prelims test series. It's very, very crucial. Without appearing in these tests, it becomes very difficult for you to clear this examination. And I'm saying this with hand on my heart. I have nothing to gain or lose, but please attempt these tests. Will you? Attempting, sir, with every test improving. Very good. Yes, perfect. Now let's get started and look at some of the important 10 topics that we will be discussing today, beginning with Committee to Protect Journalists. What is the context? CPG has published a report. According to this report, the number of journalists jailed has reached a record high. So for your prelims examination, maybe a question on CPJ would be asked. Previously, a question on Amnesty International has been asked. So you might expect a question on the Committee to Protect Journalists. Now, what are these types of questions? First, this organization was founded in the year 1981. Why? To protect journalists, or should we say to protect freedom to report? Or should we say to promote press freedom? This organization was founded by 3 US journalists or correspondents. So what is the context? Committee to Protect Journalists. It has released a report according to which the number of journalists who have been jailed throughout the world has increased. What was the number previously? This number has gone up by 20%. Which are these countries where most number of journalists are jailed? Not India, but countries such as Iran, China, Myanmar, Turkey, and Belarus. So you have to be absolutely sure India is not amongst the top 5 countries or the worst performing countries where press freedom is under attack. The worst performing countries are countries such as Iran, China, Belarus, Turkey, and Myanmar. But this organization, which was founded by a group of 3 US correspondents or journalists in the year 1981, it was founded in New York, United States of America. And the purpose was to promote press freedom. Because unless and until media or the press has the freedom to report what is happening around the world, people will not become informed citizens. That is why press freedom is very important. Freedom to press, freedom to publish whatever you want to publish. And how does this CPJ promote press freedom? It releases reports. Listen to me carefully. It also conducts research. And through these reports and researches, basically they convey or they provide the snapshot of obstructions to press freedom. When they conduct research, when they publish reports, through these reports and researches, they publish a snapshot. They give a snapshot of obstructions to press freedom. Which are these countries where press freedom is under assault? And that is how they impress upon governments to release these journalists or to work in favor of these journalists. And I will give you one example of that. The year was 1982, when the first successful campaign was launched by this organization. What was the campaign? Some journalists were arrested in Argentina. Argentina has now won the FIFA World Cup. Argentina is in the news. CPJ is in the news. So maybe we can find a link. And what is that link? I'll discuss. Some journalists were arrested in Argentina. Why? Because they were covering the Falkland War. What was this Falklands War? It was basically a 10-week undeclared war. War is normally declared, but this time it was not declared. It was an undeclared 10-week war between Argentina and Britain. What was this war on? It was basically on 3 overseas British territories. Which are these 3 British territories overseas? One was Falkland Islands. The other was South Georgia. The third one was South Sandwich Islands. These islands, they are not in Europe. They're basically in the Southern America, the Latin part. So these 3 islands, which are the overseas territories of Britain, on April 2, 1982, Argentina first invaded Falkland Islands and then captured it, and then invaded South Georgia. This is when United Kingdom sent its naval task force and ultimately a war broke out between Argentina and Britain. But no country officially declared war on each other. And this is where United States and other countries, they supported Britain. Some Latin American countries supported Argentina, but ultimately Argentina lost this war. At that time, Argentina was under military dictatorship. So when this war ended, it hastened the decline of this military rule in Argentina. And it is considered that it was this war which led to the emergence or which led to the re-emergence of democracy in Argentina. It was this war which ultimately ended the military dictatorship or military rule in Argentina and brought Argentina under democracy. So this campaign was led by CPJ, wherein they pressurized the Argentina government to release the 3 journalists which have been arrested. That means CPJ, what it basically does, through its reports, through its campaigns, through its researches, it impresses upon the governments to take steps for the freedom of the press. So through these campaigns, it has helped large number of press journalists and media personnel to come out of the detention. because they have been illegally detained by their countries. And if there is a question in your prelims examination, which of the following is considered to be the Red Cross of journalism? That organization is considered to be Committee to Protect Journalists. Red Cross, which is an international humanitarian organization which believes in volunteers so that volunteers can help in wars, volunteers can help in earthquakes or natural disasters. Similarly, if there is an organization which can be considered or which is considered to be the Red Cross of journalists, which helps journalists in times of crisis when they're illegally detained, that organization is CPJ. Long story short, CPJ conducts researches, publishes reports, which basically tells us in which countries journalists are under threat. India is not amongst the worst countries, performing countries. There are countries such as Iran, Myanmar, Belarus, countries such as China and Turkey, which are the worst performing countries when it comes to press freedom. But India is also highlighted in this report because there are some 7 journalists who are under detention. And CPJ is now urging the government of India to release them. What is CPJ? It's headquartered in New York. It was established in the year 1981. It is basically an international, not-for-profit organization. And the basic purpose of this organization is to promote press freedom. And how it promotes press freedom? By publishing various researches. And it is their report and research which ultimately helped in the year 1982 when some British journalists were arrested in Argentina because they were covering the Falklands War. And ultimately they were released. So the first biggest campaign of the CPJ was in the Falklands War, a 10-week undeclared war, which basically helped Argentina to come out of military dictatorship and embrace democracy. But what sort of question can be asked in your examination? Let's look at the question. Match the following. Here is the committee. Here is the headquarters. Committee to Protect Journalists is based out of New York. Reporters Without Borders is based out of Paris. International Federation of Journalists is based out of Brussels, Belgium. So which is the correct statement? 1 is matched to 3, 2 is to 2. A is the right answer. But now let's throw some light on these 2 organizations as well. Reporters Without Borders and International Federation of Journalists. For example, this organization, it was founded in the year 1926. It is based in Brussels, Belgium. But what is this organization? For example, in India, there are various trade unions. Clear? Similarly, there can be trade unions for journalists. Now imagine all the trade unions of all the countries of the world coming under one big trade union. Such an institution is International Federation of Journalists. What is this International Federation of Journalists? It's basically a trade union of more than 146 countries of the world. Their journalists' trade unions. So in these 146 countries, there are journalist trade unions. The mother of all these trade unions is the International Federation of Journalists, which is based out of Brussels, which was established in 1926. But the most important point is, it represents, listen to me carefully, it represents journalists at the United Nations. And at the same time, one more important detail, this organization is the associate member of UNESCO. This organization, International Federation of Journalists, is an associate member of UNESCO and it represents journalists at the United Nations. But what is this Reporters Without Borders? Formed in the year 1985 in Paris. What is the purpose? The purpose, again, to promote the press freedom or to access, to help public information, to help public gain access information. That's the job of Reporters Without Borders. But most important detail about this organization. Since the year 2002, it is publishing an index known as Press Freedom Index. And India, unfortunately, is ranked very low in all these indices released by Reporters Without Borders since 2002. So what is the context? A report has been released by CPJ, but not just CPJ. You should also know about International Federation of Journalists. You should also have some idea about Reporters Without Borders, and you should have the idea that an index, Press Freedom Index, which is publicized every year, is released by Reporters Without Borders since the year 2002. These are the details that you need to know from this topic. This topic is over. Let's jump to another topic. But before that, if you have any questions, let me know. These are international organizations. These are not part of the government. These are independent organizations without any affiliation with the governments. Long story short, everything is clear. Thank you, Rahul. Now let's look at another topic. Belagavi or Belgaon dispute. Dispute between Maharashtra and Karnataka. What is the issue and what exactly do you need to know from this topic? We will discuss. And at the end, I will ask you a simple question on this topic because I know you have been reading about this dispute, but I want to understand whether you are reading this dispute correctly or not. I'll ask you a question. Let's see how many amongst you can answer that question. The year was 1950 when the Constitution was enacted. And at that time, the entire country was divided into 4 parts. Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D. Part A had territories such as Bombay, Madras. Part B had areas which were previously the princely states, for example, Hyderabad. Part C had areas which were previously under the Chief Commissioner, which were directly controlled by the Governor General. These areas such as Coorg, Delhi, and Part D had Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now it was to be decided, how do we reorganize the country? Previously, many committees were set up. You have read about these committees, I'm sure. S.K. Dar Commission was set up, JVP Committee was set up. And almost all these organizations, all these committees said, language should not be the criteria for reorganizing the country. If you want to reorganize the country, if you want to make more states, create more states, divide a state into multiple states, do that, but not on the basis of language. You should not be creating a state for Tamilians, creating a state for Telugu-speaking population or Marathi-speaking population, because it will weaken the Union of India. And ultimately, it will sow seeds of partition. Something that happened when India was partitioned into Pakistan and India. So religion then became the reason for partition of this country. Now, if you are creating states and if you will create states in the name of language, now language will become the basis for another partition of this country. So don't use language as the basis for reorganization of the country. But ultimately what happened? Poti Sriramadu, he went on fast unto death. He wanted all the Telugu speaking areas in Mysore, in Tamil Nadu, Madras, to be carved into one state for Telugu speaking population. Unfortunately, he died. There were protests, there were killings. The government succumbed to the pressure. And in the independent India, Andhra became the first state to be carved out in the name of language. October 1953, Andhra in the post-independent India became the first state to be carved out in the name of language. And then a commission was set up, States Reorganization Commission. The task of this commission was to identify how do we now reorganize the country. And States Reorganization Commission submitted its report in 1955. And then ultimately what happened? States Reorganization Act was passed in the year 1956. Based on this, part A, B, C, D, this differentiation was discarded, and ultimately 14 states and 6 union territories were created. And it was this States Reorganization Act which also created zonal councils. And we will discuss these zonal councils today because something important has happened. An Eastern Zonal Council meeting was presided over by the Honorable Home Minister. So what is the issue? Belgaum or Belagavi dispute. This dispute's origin is the States Reorganization Act, which was passed in the year 1956. According to this law, and according to the report of the States Reorganization Commission, language can be the basis for reorganization. We can create states in the name of language. So when the states were reorganized, Bombay was also reorganized. Now, Bombay was reorganized because Bombay was a big state. Bombay was to be reorganized. Some Marathi-speaking areas became Maharashtra, and some Kannada-speaking areas became part of Mysore. So Mysore was the state. And this Mysore, which was a state, this Mysore was renamed as Karnataka. The year was 1973. Sometimes these facts are very important because if you look at the trend of the UPSC, sometimes purely factual questions have been asked and students are left aghast as how can UPSC ask these simple yet complex and difficult factual questions. So you have to be ready. Long story short, there is a dispute between Maharashtra and Karnataka. And we can trace the origin of this dispute to the States Reorganization Act passed in the year 1956, which made language as the basis of reorganization. And when Bombay was reorganized, some of the Marathi-speaking areas became Maharashtra. Some of the Kannada-speaking population areas became Mysore. Mysore later on was renamed as Karnataka in the year 1973. Maharashtra basically said, we don't agree. There are some Marathi-speaking areas, because language is the basis of reorganization. There are some Marathi-speaking areas which are part of Karnataka. Please give those areas back to us. And particularly, we want to take Belagavi. Belagavi was not known as Belagavi then, it was known as Belgaum. So we need Belgaum district should be part of Maharashtra. And there are some Marathi speaking villages. There are more than 200, 500, some said 800 villages. They should also be brought within the fold of Maharashtra. Karnataka said no. We will not hand over Belagavi to you or Belgaum to you. In fact, there are some Marathi speaking area, there are some Kannada speaking areas in Maharashtra. Give us those areas. For example, Jat Taluka or Jatha Taluka in Maharashtra. In fact, recently the Chief Minister of Karnataka, Mr. Bommai, has said that we provided drinking water to Jat Taluka in Maharashtra. And more than 40 Gram Panchayats, according to the Chief Minister, they have passed a resolution that they want to be part of Karnataka. Maharashtra Chief Minister says no such resolution has been passed. All these villages will remain part of Maharashtra. So there are some areas which Karnataka is claiming. There are some areas which Maharashtra is claiming. But more forceful claim is that on Belgaum. And in fact, there is an organization known as Maharashtra Ekakaran or Ekikaran Samiti, which basically wants Belagavi or Belgaum to be part of Maharashtra. And in fact, all political parties in Maharashtra support this organization. And if you can see in this picture, that is how they are protesting. Belgaum becomes important again because in 1950, Veer Savarkar, he was arrested in Belgaum and he remained in jail for a number of days. Why? He was protesting the visit of the Prime Minister of Pakistan to Delhi. So Prime Minister of Pakistan is visiting Delhi. Mr. Veer Savarkar protested. Ultimately, he was arrested and he was booked under the preventive detention law and he remained in jail in Belgaum. Then a petition was filed by his son, a habeas corpus petition was filed. The court said, we will release Veer Savarkar, but you have to give an assurance that you will not indulge in politics for a year. And now, why is this context important? Because the portrait of Mr. Veer Savarkar is about to be unveiled in the legislative structure in Belgaum. And what is this legislative structure? To assert its claim on Belagavi. Karnataka, what it did in the year 2007, it started constructing another legislative house in Belgaum, which is what they call Suvarna Vidhan Sabha. The Legislative Assembly or the legislature of Karnataka is in Bengaluru, and it is known as Vidhan Sabha. Now, the beautiful structures. And they started constructing another Vidhan Sabha in Belgaum to assert its claim on this district and called it Suvarna Vidhan Sabha. And every year, Vidhan Sabha, and every year, the winter session of the legislature is conducted in Belgaum. This time also the winter session is being conducted in Belgaum, and the leaders of Maharashtra Ekikaran Samiti, they are protesting, and some of them have been arrested. But according to the States Reorganization Act, if you have any problem with the border disputes, or if there are some border disputes resulting because of the States Reorganization Act, you can approach zonal councils and we will discuss it there. When this award was given, when Belgaum and other areas, Marathi-speaking areas, became part of Karnataka, Maharashtra protested. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister. She ultimately appointed a committee headed by Meher Chand Mahajan. The year was 1966. Meher Chand Mahajan was the third Chief Justice of India. A committee was set up under Meher Chand Mahajan, and Mr. Mahajan said some areas should be given to Karnataka, some areas should be given to Maharashtra, but Belgaum specifically should remain with Karnataka because it is now Kannada majority area. If language is the basis of reorganization, the Kannada dominated area, which is the Belgaum, should be given to Karnataka, should remain with Karnataka. But Maharashtra did not accept. And ultimately what happened, the year was 2004. Maharashtra approached Supreme Court and questioned the States Reorganization Act of 1956. I will recap the story, but at the end, I will ask you a simple question, and you will have to answer that question. What exactly is the most relevant part of this story, relevant part of this controversy for your civil services examination? The story is there is a district called Belgaum. Clear? This is part of Karnataka, but Maharashtra is claiming it. For this, Maharashtra in 2004 approached the Supreme Court. Clear? This Belgaum, because it was known as Belgaum initially, the year was 2014 when Belgaum was renamed as Belagavi. If you want to change the name of a state, that's the power with the Parliament under Article 3 of the Constitution. Parliament under Article 3 can increase the area of a state, decrease the area of a state, alter the boundaries of the state, bifurcate a state, also change the name of a state. So if the name of a state is to be changed, that's the power that lies with the Parliament. But what about changing the name of a city? State government has to pass a resolution. State legislature has to pass a resolution. But ultimately, you need the approval of Ministry of Home Affairs. Ministry of Home Affairs has to agree that the name of the city should be changed. And for that, you have to give the reason. What is the compelling reason? Why do you want to change the name of the city? And you have to ensure that the name of the city is not matching the neighboring area. And you also have to ensure that it will not create any problems. That is why Ministry of Home Affairs, before it gives approval to the state government, it has to seek the input from the Intelligence Bureau. It has to seek input from various agencies. It has to seek input from railways. And once their approval is given, Ministry of Home Affairs gives its approval and you can change the name of the city. The year was 2014 when ultimately the Ministry of Home Affairs, Mr. Rajnath Singh, then was the Home Minister, gave the approval and Belgaum was renamed as Belagavi. But the question that I want you to answer is, what is this case before the Supreme Court? What exactly is Supreme Court doing on this matter? What is the exact petition in the Supreme Court? Can anybody tell me what is the exact petition in the Supreme Court? Effectiveness of zonal councils, Belgaum to be part of Maharashtra, Maharashtra's claim. No, so don't tell me the political answer, or don't tell me the layman's answer that the case is before the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, will Supreme Court or is Supreme Court hearing the matter to decide whether Belgaum will be part of Maharashtra or Belgaum will be part of Karnataka? Is Supreme Court hearing this matter? Can you tell me? Yes. Then the question is on maintainability. The question before the Supreme Court right now is, can we even accept this petition? Is this petition maintainable? Can we hear this petition? Because what Maharashtra is filing a case before the court is challenging the States Reorganization Act, which was passed in the year 1956. And this case was filed in the year 2004. It's been more than close to 2 decades now. And Supreme Court is still deciding whether we can accept this petition, whether we can hear this petition. Karnataka government is saying, Supreme Court, you should not hear this matter. Why? Because it comes under Article 3 of the Constitution. It is the power of the parliament to reorganize the country. And if the country has been reorganized by parliament, no state has the right to object. Maharashtra, on the other hand, is claiming Article 131. Any dispute between the center or the state, or any dispute between the two states, comes under original jurisdiction of the court. And as such, you should hear this matter. But if you ask me, Supreme Court, in all likelihood, is going to dismiss this petition. Why? Because Supreme Court never gets involved in the reorganization of the states, because that's the power of the parliament. You cannot question whether the state should have been bifurcated or not, because there were petitions challenging the Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act as well. It was dismissed by the Supreme Court because Supreme Court does not confuse itself, does not consider the petitions related to reorganization. But Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act is different. That's different. We will discuss sometimes later. That's different because the basis of that is Article 370. Whether Article 370 was diluted correctly or incorrectly, that's a big question that Supreme Court has to answer. But on this particular matter, I think the Supreme Court is going to dismiss this petition. But what do you need to know? Number one, what is the States Reorganization Act, which said language should be the basis of reorganization? What is this dispute on Belgaum? And what is the exact issue in the Supreme Court? The exact issue on the Supreme Court right now, the Supreme Court has to hear whether this petition is even maintainable. If it is maintainable, we will hear it. If it is not maintainable, we are going to dismiss it. Clear? That's the dispute. And Mr. Veer Savarkar was arrested in Belgaum in 1950. Why? Because he protested the visit of the Pakistani Prime Minister to Delhi. But what sort of question can be asked in your prelims examination? Let's take a poll on this. How many amongst you can answer? Mahatma Gandhi became the president of the Congress Party at the Belgaum session in 1924. Gandhiji took over as the president from who was the president before Mahatma Gandhi? Because Mahatma Gandhi was the president of the Indian National Congress. or he presided over the yearly session of the Indian National Congress only once. And that year was 1924. And that session was conducted in Belgaum. But he took over as the president of the Indian National Congress. From whom? Give me the answer. Eight seconds to go. Sir, Telangana was carved out as per States Reorganization Act or under Article 3? Under Article 3. And only 17% students are correct. This is the leaderboard. Mahatma Gandhi became the president of the Congress party. He took over as the president from Muhammad Ali Johar. But this is where you can be confused as well. Because just few months ago, 1924 December, when Mahatma Gandhi took over as the president of the Congress party at the Belgaum session, there was a special session conducted in Delhi. And that special session was presided over by Abul Kalam Azad. But he was not the president of the Congress party at that time. He only presided over a special session of the Congress party in Delhi. But the president of the Congress party for that year, because yearly the presidents would change, in that year, 1924 before, the president was Muhammad Ali Johar. So C is the right answer. No, this is not Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Now let's look at the third topic, zonal council. And we will discuss some important things regarding zonal council here. When States Reorganization Act was passed in the year 1956, the first Prime Minister of independent India, Pandit Nehru, he suggested that we should create zonal councils. Let's create zonal councils in the northern, southern, eastern, western, and central part of India. So, and we will group all these states in one zone. All the northern states in one zone, all the southern states in one zone. And whatever disputes they might have, we will resolve them in these zonal councils. So zonal councils will become part of cooperative spirit. And we will resolve these disputes in these zonal councils. And that is how in 1956, 5 zonal councils were created in northern, southern, central, eastern, and western. The year was 1972 when a 6th zonal council was created. And that 6th zonal council is known as Northeastern Zonal Council. But this Northeastern Zonal Council is not created under the States Reorganization Act. It is created under the Northeastern Zonal Council Act of 1972. So if the question is asked, how many, and this question has been asked in the UPSC previously, how many zonal councils were created by the States Reorganization Act of 1956? That's 5. Northern, Southern, Central, Eastern, Western. A 6th zonal council was created in the year 1972, Northeastern Zonal Council. And that was created by a different act of the parliament in 1972. That was not created by the States Reorganization Act. And the Home Minister is the chairperson of these zonal councils. That's number 1. Number 2, the vice chairman of these zonal councils is the chief minister by rotation. For example, if it is a southern zonal council, Home Minister will be the chairman. In one particular year, Mr. Stalin will be the vice chairman. Then by rotation, KCR will be the chairman. Then by rotation, Mr. Jagan Mohan Reddy will be the vice chairman. So by rotation, chief ministers will act as vice chairman. But most important detail which students miss is that union territories are also included union territories are also included in these zonal councils. So zonal councils do not only include states, union territories are also part of these zonal councils. And in these zonal councils, since something very important, this can help you write a good answer in your mains examination as well. Since 2006 to 2013, only 6 meetings were conducted, which means less than 1 meeting per year. But what about the period from 2014 to 2022? 23 meetings have been held, which means close to 3 meetings per year. According to Home Ministry, 1,000 issues have been raised in these zonal councils. And the success rate is 93% of these issues have been resolved. That speaks volumes about the efficiency of these zonal councils. 93% of 1,000 issues raised in these zonal councils in the period since Mr. Modi came to power have been resolved. But the point here is, a zonal council meeting of the Eastern India, Eastern Zonal Council meeting was held under the chairpersonship of Mr. Amit Shah, the Honorable Home Minister. And this time what he asked all the states to implement something called Nidan. Can anybody tell me what is Nidan? Surbi is right. Nidan is basically an acronym. Disease. Hoshar says disease. Now, it is basically National Integrated Database of Arrested National Integrated Database of Arrested Persons against Narcotics. So basically those who have been arrested, and this portal is part of developed by Narcotics Control Bureau. It contains details of all those arrested and jailed for drug offenses. And one more important detail, this Nidan talks about details of all the persons who have directly or indirectly manufactured drugs or narcotics or psychotropic substances. Whether you have directly or indirectly manufactured these drugs, or whether you have directly or indirectly produced these drugs, sold these drugs, consumed these drugs, transported these drugs, conducted import or export of these drugs, whether you are directly or indirectly involved in narcotics or their dealings, all your details will be mentioned in this portal called Nidan. And the Home Minister has basically asked all the states to implement this system at the district level as well. Right now it is at the state level. Now the Home Ministry is asking the states to implement this at the district level as well, so that we have a minute understanding of what exactly is happening in drug trade. That is why even at the district level, you have to implement, or you should implement, Nidan, which is a portal developed by the Narcotics Control Bureau, because the Home Minister says our next fight is against the drugs, the narcotics or the psychotropic substances. So what is a zonal council? Basically 5 zonal councils total there are 6, 5 zonal councils under the States Reorganization Act, 1 zonal council under the Northeastern Act of 1972. Clear? The chairperson of the zonal council is the Home Minister. Who is the vice chairman? Chief Minister by rotation. And at the same time, when we look at these zonal councils, the idea is all the disputes, including the border disputes that states will have with each other, should be ideally discussed in these zonal councils. And over the last 8 years, we have seen the efficiency of these zonal councils have increased. In the period 2006 to 2013, less than 1 meeting of the zonal council was conducted every year. And now this has increased to almost 3 meetings per year. More than 1,000 issues have been raised. Home Ministry says out of these 1,000 issues raised in these zonal council meetings, 93% have been resolved. Look at the success rate, 93%. And in the recently conducted zonal council meeting of Eastern India, Eastern Zonal Council, the Home Minister is asking the state to implement Nidan at the district level as well. Or basically, he was talking about implementing NCORD. And what is NCORD? Narcotics Coordination. Narcotics Coordination is a portal. And if you look at this portal, one aspect of this portal or one tab of this portal is Nidan. And what is Nidan basically? Nidan talks about details, gives the details of all those arrested and jailed under the drug offenses. And the Home Ministry is asking the states to implement this at the district level as well. That's the context that you need to understand. I'll give you a question. You will have to tell me what is the right answer. I'll give you 1 minute to answer this question. First, I'll read the question myself to come up with the answer. All zonal council statutory bodies. Okay. Prime Minister, Chief Minister. Okay. Tell me the answer. Dharamjit, Belagavi dispute we have covered. Maybe you have joined late. 30 seconds to go. NCORD full form. NCORD means Narcotics Coordination. 10 seconds. Nidan is for all zones. Okay, so we have 65% students who have given the right answer. This is the leaderboard. All zonal councils are statutory bodies established under the States Reorganization Act. Incorrect, because there is a 6th zonal council which is established under the Northeastern Act of 1972. Prime Minister is the chairperson of all zonal councils. Incorrect. It's the Home Minister. The Chief Minister of the largest state in terms of area acts as the Vice Chairman of the Zonal Council. Incorrect. It's the Chief Minister by rotation. How many statements are correct? D. None is the right answer. Samiksha, why I am not audible? You can't be audible. You're on mute. Only I have to be audible. Okay. Now let's look at topic number 4. Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill 2021. This bill was passed by Lok Sabha last year. This bill was passed in the recent or the ongoing winter session of Rajya Sabha this year. And there are activists, particularly wildlife activists, who are worried about this bill, worried about this law, particularly when it comes to elephants. Why? We will discuss it slightly later. But what is this bill? Since this bill was introduced in 2021, that is why it will be known as the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act of 2021. Although it was passed by Rajya Sabha this year in the recently concluded winter session. But what is this bill basically? Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill. What is this bill basically trying to amend? This bill is trying to amend, or this bill has amended, the Wildlife Act of 1972. What is this Wildlife Act? Basically, we need to protect wildlife. Simple. But what is wildlife? Wildlife does not only means wild animals. It means animals. It means birds. It means plants as well. So the law was passed in the year 1972, Wildlife Protection Act. This law talks about the protection of wildlife, which means wild animals, plants, as well as birds. Protect them. And now this bill has been amended. This law has been amended. Why it has been amended? There are two reasons. Reason number one, to include more species under protection, to give protective cover to more species. That is why this bill was introduced. Number two, to implement CITES. What is CITES? CITES is basically an international agreement signed by the government of India and various other countries. The intention of this agreement, CITES, is there are endangered species. We have to prevent their trade. Trade in endangered species. All those species, whether these are animals, plants, or birds, all those species which are threatened, can trade be allowed in these threatened species? Only if their survival is not under threat. Their survival is not under threat. For example, there is one Appendix 1 under CITES. All those species which are listed under Appendix 1, you can't trade in these species. You can't have international trade in these species. Completely banned or regulated. Regulated in the sense, you can carry on trade in these species only if their survival is not in danger. Only if the trade or international trade in these species does not affect their survival. For example, cheetahs. Cheetahs are endangered. Although the cheetahs in Africa, they are considered to be vulnerable under IUCN. But when you look at the cheetahs in Asia, they are considered to be critically endangered. In fact, in India, cheetahs have been extinct. There are 50 numbers or 50 individuals of cheetah which are found in Iran. So basically in Asia, cheetahs are extinct. But when it comes to Africa, the cheetahs are considered to be vulnerable. And there are demands from various activists which say cheetahs should be declared endangered even in Africa. Because lots and lots of poaching goes on in killing the cheetahs. So if cheetahs are to be internationally traded, for that permission should be given by CITES. That means under this agreement, permission should be given by this organization. And that is how cheetahs were brought from Namibia to India in the Kono National Park in Madhya Pradesh. Why? Because their international trade or their transportation does not affect their survival. Long story short, there is this Wildlife Act of 1972, which is basically Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. We have to protect wildlife. Life means wild animals, wild birds, plants as well. And how do we protect them? For that, there are detailed procedures mentioned in Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. It is this law which was amended this year. Amended why? Because we needed to bring in more species under protection. We want to protect more species, and we wanted to implement this international agreement known as CITES. CITES basically says that in endangered species, you should not trade, or trade should be done only if it is not affecting the survival of that species. But then what happened? We wanted to implement CITES because under this agreement, every country has to have a management authority. Every country should have a scientific authority as well. What will this management authority do? Management authority will give permission whether this species, which is endangered, but this species is in India, whether this species can be exported or whether a species can be imported. That permission will be given by management authority. But management authority has to take some scientific input from this scientific authority. This scientific authority, which it will advise whether if you export this species to another country, it is going to affect its survival. So you export it to another country, it will not survive, which means management authority will not give the export permission. You import this variety, you import this species to India, that permission will be given to management authority. But the scientific authority can say, if you import this specimen to India, it is going to destroy the biodiversity of India. It is going to attack the wildlife of India. That is why we don't suggest, you should not give permission to import these specimens to India. So because we needed the establishment of a management committee and a scientific committee, that is why this law was amended in this year. And this law also talks about invasive alien species. Invasive alien species, alien means these are not from India, they're not legally in India, they're not residing in India, or they are not operating in India. But if they are from outside, and you want to bring this species to India, species can be wild animal, species can be a bird, species can be a plant. If you invite these specimens to India, it's going to destroy our agriculture, it's going to destroy our plants, it's going to destroy our biodiversity. For that, the permission has to be given by the scientific committee. And something else, conservation reserves. This is where this topic becomes interesting. How? Because now it talks about center-state relations. This is where environment meets Indian polity. Center-state relations. How? The first thing you need to understand, Article 253 of the Constitution. The Parliament has the power to enact a law if this law tries to give effect to an international agreement. Even if this law encroaches upon the domain of the states, doesn't matter. Because under Article 253, Parliament alone has the power to make a law to implement international agreements, international treaties. So if CITES is an international agreement which we need to implement, for that this bill was introduced under Article 253 of the Constitution. And this bill talks about conservation reserves. What is this conservation reserve? Listen to me carefully. This is a protected area. Now, even outside the protected area, a conservation reserve can be created. Conservation reserve can be created. In a sense, locals may not be able to bring their livestock for grazing purposes. They cannot pluck some leaves. They cannot go for fishing. They cannot kill wild animals. That means restrictions can be imposed on the people to access this conservation reserve, which is outside of the protected area. Who can create this conservation reserve? Previously, this conservation reserve could have been created by the state only, by the states only. Now it can be created by the center as well. Center-state relations. That means under this law, under this bill which was passed in the winter session of the parliament, which is awaiting the president's assent, the signature of the president, which he will give. Previously, only the states had the power to talk about conservation reserves or to create conservation reserves. Now, this power is given to center as well. Center can also establish a conservation reserve. And what is this conservation reserve? Basically, the people may not be allowed to bring their livestock for grazing purposes, may not be allowed to go for fishing in this conservation reserve. Restrictions can be imposed on the movement of people into this conservation reserve. So that power is now given to the center as well. That's controversy number one, or that is politicization number one. But the government is not wrong here, because under Article 253, only the parliament has the power to give effect to an international agreement. That's number one. Number two, there is something called vermin species. Listen to me carefully. Vermin species. Which are these species? Basically disease causing. For example, we have mice, rats, bats, fruit flies. These are known as vermin species. Basically, they cause diseases, and they also destroy, in a sense, food items, in a sense, some of the crops that are being sowed. And it is possible to kill them. The government gives the permission, you can kill these vermin species. Can we include more vermin species? Let's say tomorrow, monkeys, can they be killed? Wild boars, can they be killed? Other animals, can they be killed? Till about 1991, state governments were given the rights that you can decide who are these vermin species. Basically, if you say that this species is vermin, basically causing diseases and affecting and destroying the soil or destroying the crops, you can give the order to kill these vermin species. 1991 onwards, this power was given to the center only. Now, center alone has the power to decide which are the vermin species in the states as well. That's how, for example, 2015, Nilgai, for a year, was declared vermin species in Bihar. Vermin species in Bihar. In Nilgais can be killed because they are disease causing and they destroy the food or they destroy the crops. Similarly, in 2019, monkeys were declared by the central government in Shimla municipality as vermin species. But Kerala is requesting Environment Ministry that there are wild boars, they are causing destruction to our crops. Please allow us to declare them vermin species so that we can kill them. The center is not agreeing. Which means this act also talks about center-state relations. But most important controversy is on, as I said, elephants. And what is this controversy? In this Wildlife Protection Act, elephants are placed under Schedule 1. Highest protection is given to elephants. Similar protection is given to tigers. That means you cannot capture tigers. You cannot kill tigers. You cannot trade in tigers. Absolutely not possible. The highest protection is available to tigers because tigers are placed under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Act. Same protection is available to elephants, except might be surprised, or maybe you are not surprised, you would know this. Elephants are the only animal placed in Wildlife Protection Act Schedule 1, which can still be owned legally by means of inheritance or gift. Can you own a tiger? You can't. Can you own a leopard? You can't, because they have the highest protection under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. Elephants, which are also placed under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, they are the only animal placed under Schedule 1 which can be legally owned. You can trade in it. You can gift elephant. You can gift it, or you can inherit it from your forefathers. And this Wildlife Protection Bill 2021 creates another problem. And what is that problem? Now listen to me carefully. Even if this is an animal which is placed in Schedule 1, you can still kill a tiger. Can you kill a tiger? Yes. If tigers are threatening humans, in a sense, if it is dangerous for the survival of a human race, if there is a tiger who is now started eating the locals, you can kill that tiger. Or you can have tigers captive for, let's say, scientific reasons. Maybe you need tiger captive in a zoo, in a well-developed zoo. Or for example, snakes. Snakes are also under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. You can capture snake as well for scientific purpose. Why? Because you want to manufacture drug. For drug manufacturing, you can capture snakes. So this is allowed. So even if there are species under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, you cannot trade in them. You cannot own them. You cannot kill them because they are not vermin. But under two circumstances, you can control them. In a sense, one, you can kill them if they are dangerous to the survival of the mankind. Second, you can capture them for scientific requirements in a zoo, for scientific needs, for the manufacture of drugs, for example. But elephants, they were given another reason. Although they were under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, you could kill an elephant if it is destroying people, killing people. You could capture elephant for zoo, or you can legally own an elephant with the permission of the chief wildlife warden. Activists, animal rights activists, they have been long asking that since you can legally own elephants in India, which means you can trade them, you can change the ownership, you can gift elephant to somebody. Basically, you are selling it. On paper, I'm telling you, this is my gift to you, but basically I'm selling elephant to you, or I'm trading elephant, and at the same time, I can inherit elephant as well. Activists were saying, please remove this provision. Government, instead of removing this provision, has made it even more problematic. Elephants can be traded, transported for religious or any other reason. Now, elephants can be traded, can be transported for religious or any other reason. which animal rights activists are basically saying will endanger the lives of jumbos. Basically, these elephants. So, what is this issue? Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill. It was passed by Lok Sabha last year. It was passed by Rajya Sabha in the recent winter session of the Parliament. What is this law? Wildlife Protection Amendment, which basically means you are amending something. What are you amending? The original Act of 1972, Wildlife Protection Act, which means this act wants to protect wildlife, which means wild animals, plants, birds as well. And then there are some safeguards. Safeguards such as, if a species is placed under Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act, you cannot trade in this species, you cannot kill this species. There are exceptions. Exceptions such as, you can kill this species if it is a man-eater. If the tiger has become a man-eater, kill. Or you can hold this tiger captive if it is for a zoo, if it is for some scientific reasons, if you want to conduct research, or if it is for the manufacture of some drugs. For these two reasons, you can either kill a species placed in first schedule, or you can hold them captive. But for elephants, you could have inherited an elephant, you could have gifted an elephant, which means trade in elephants is legally possible. Now you are further complicating this. You are saying even transport of elephants is allowed. For what? For religious or any other reason, which animal rights activists are saying is going to make it very difficult for the survival of elephants. Because for the protection of wildlife, we have this act. But this is an act which does not protect elephant. Because elephants are the only animals placed in first schedule of this law, which can be legally owned in India. And you're further complicating them by saying transport of elephants is allowed for religious or any other purpose. That's problem number one. Problem number two. This bill was passed, or this law was amended for two reasons: to bring in more species under protection and to implement CITES. What is CITES? It's an international agreement which basically says international trade, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. International trade in endangered species should be restricted or regulated. That means take our permission if you want to trade in endangered species. And we will give permission only if this international trade does not threaten the very survival of this animal, very survival of this species. And to implement CITES, we needed to amend our law. Because who will give this import-export decision? Management authority. Management authority has to take scientific advice. Whether if we allow export of this species, it is not going to affect the survival of this species. Or if we are going to allow the import of a species, it is not going to affect the biodiversity of India. For that, we needed to amend this law because we had to create a management committee. We had to create a scientific authority. And at the same time, another controversy is on conservation reserves. Because previously, conservation reserves could have been created by the states. Now, this power is extended to the center as well. Now, center can also establish conservation reserves, basically in states, which affect center-state relations. Third point of contention regarding vermin species. Till 1991, states could have declared some species vermin, basically kill them if they are disease-causing. For example, if there is some disease, a viral disease, or any other disease in goats, kill them, declare them as vermin, cull them. The point is, previously state governments had the power to declare a species as vermin species. And after 1991, this power was given to the center. And this is where there is a controversy. In a sense, Nilgai declared vermin in Bihar for 1 year in 2015. Monkeys declared vermin in Shimla municipality in 2019. But Kerala is asking for a vermin status for wild boars because they are disease causing and they're destroying the livestock, they're destroying the soils as well, the crops as well. But the central government, the environment ministry is not accepting. But what this law also has done, it has increased the punishment. Previously for general violation, what is this general violation? For example, people, those who are the inhabitants of the forest area, they cannot enter the protected area along with their livestock for grazing purposes. Can't do that. But if you violate this, up to 25,000 was the punishment, was the penalty. Now this has been increased to 1 lakh. Or we can say up to 1 lakh fine will be imposed on those who violate the general principles of Wildlife Protection Act. But then there are some protections for specifically protected animals. For example, if you kill a tiger, which is a specially protected animal, minimum punishment is now at least 25,000. Previously, minimum punishment was 10,000. Now it has been increased to 25,000. Minimum, maximum, it can go up to anything. That's another thing that this law has done. But what sort of question can be asked in your prelims examination from this topic? Let's take a look. Let's take a poll. I'll give you 1 minute for this because which of the following are covered under the Wildlife Protection Act? That means Wildlife Protection Act. Wildlife means animals, birds, plants as well. So basically, which all that are mentioned in this question are covered under the Wildlife Protection Act? I gave you a hint, yes. Okay, 54% students are right. This is the leaderboard. These are the students who have answered all the 3 questions correctly. Mammals, yes. Birds, yes. Reptiles, yes. Amphibians, yes. Fishes, yes. Insects, yes. Crabs, yes. Corals, yes. Sea cucumbers, yes. Mollusks, yes. D. All of the above is the right answer. Okay. Let's look at another topic, Baipur Uru. Baipur is basically a place in Kerala. Uru is basically this traditional dough or a vessel. And this is made up of pure wood and coir. What is coir? Coir is basically the fiber of the outside part of the coconut. And this is used for making this traditional vessel known as dao or known as Baipur Uru. Now, according to Kerala, the Gulf countries were the first patrons of Baipur Uru. The brilliant part about this is, this vessel is manufactured using traditional methods. That means no modern techniques of cutting the wood, pasting the wood, inserting the wood, or mixing is allowed here. Only the traditional instruments are used, traditional way this vessel is constructed. That means the wood is also cut in a traditional manner, not via machines. So basically, traditional way is used to manufacture, produce these doughs. According to experts, 40 khalasis are used for 4 years to construct this vessel, which makes it very unique. And it is constructed, it is manufactured by the people in the Beypore area. And now Kerala government is filing for a GI, geographical indication, for Beypore Uru, saying it is this Beypore Uru, which is basically a symbol of Kerala's friendship and relations with Gulf countries. What is geographical indication? For example, you want to buy a shawl. And let's say you want to buy an expensive shawl as a gift and you want this shawl to be a Pashmina shawl. You go to a shop, the shopkeeper says this is a Pashmina shawl and charges you 1 lakh rupees. You're happy that I bought a Pashmina shawl for 1 lakh rupee, but when you reach home, you show it to somebody, they say, this is not a Pashmina shawl. Why? Because a Kashmiri Pashmina shawl, this is not the same. You have been fooled. What if there was a GI tag or a symbol or a mark on this shawl which said, yes, this is a pure Kashmiri Pashmina shawl? You will trust it. You will trust it and you will pay 40,000, 50,000 or 1 lakh rupees or 2 lakh rupees to buy this shawl. So this geographical indication, it basically tells us that this shawl has come from a particular geographical area, which is Kashmir. Or this laddu has come from a particular geographical area, Tirupati laddu. So that even if you buy this laddu in Delhi, but this laddu is not a Bikaner wala laddu or a Haldiram laddu. This laddu is a Tirupati laddu. Means you can trust that this has indeed come from Tirupati. That's geographical indication. So what is the context? The context is Beypore Uru. What is Beypore? It's a place. What is Uru? It's basically a traditional dough vessel. This is the vessel which does not use any modern techniques for its construction, but it uses the traditional method. And in this traditional method, 40 khalasis, 40 artisans are used for 4 years to produce one dough, to produce one vessel. And Kerala government is now saying that since this Beypore Uru is our reflection, a testament of our friendship with the Gulf countries, because we give these Urus to the Gulf countries. In fact, the Qatar World Cup, a traditional Beypore Uru was also displayed in Qatar. So since it is the symbol of our friendship with Gulf countries, we are filing for geographical indication. To file a geographical indication, you need to go to an office of geographical indication registry. And that office is in Guindy, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Once you file this application, then this office will accept, will invite objections from others. If there are no objections, ultimately GI tag is given to you. And this GI tag is valid for how many years? It's valid for 10 years. And after 10 years, you can always renew these geographical indications. As of now, 432 geographical indication has been given by this registry. 432. The last one was the onion, the type of onion in Maharashtra that was declared as part of the geographical indication. That's one thing. Second, if you look at this area, Beypore area, this is where you will find one type of dolphin. And this dolphin is found in all the warm waters of the world. This dolphin, let's say, for example, there are students, one is Athira, Payal, Nipun, Santosh, Pooja, Harsh, Jinki. Basically, your name is an identifier. You are known by this identifier, which is your name. Similarly, these dolphins, they have an identifier. They are known as soon as they are born, they produce a whistle. And this whistle becomes their identifier. So this specific type of dolphin can be found in this Bepur waters where Bepur Uru, this doe, is manufactured. So what is the context? Bepur Uru, Kerala government has filed for a geographical indication. This geographical indication is valid for 10 years, can be renewed as well. But at the same time, this Bepur Uru, what is so significant about this is that it is not using any modern techniques. It is using the traditional methods to manufacture this vessel. And it is India or Kerala's signal or a strength of relationship with the Gulf countries. Let's look at the question. And you tell me what is the right answer to this question. I'll give you 1 minute. Tell me what is the right answer. %71% students are right. A registered GI shall be valid for 10 years. After that, it can be renewed. The top 5 states holding maximum number of GIs are Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, and Kerala. Karnataka has appeared twice. It's basically Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Kerala. I think the 5th state is, I'll check out what is the 5th state, but this is correct then. Alibag white onion of Maharashtra, it should be Maharashtra, should be the 4th state. Alibag white onion of Maharashtra is the latest to bag the GI tag. This is also correct. So D, all of the above is the right answer. Okay. Crystal clear. Very good. Now we have topic 6, Agni 5. Agni 5 manufactured by Defense Research Development Organization. What is Agni 5? It's basically a nuclear carrying missile. And we say this is an intercontinental ballistic missile. Why do we say it is an intercontinental missile? The range of Agni 5 is 5,000 kilometers. If you look at Agni 1 to Agni 4, their range is 700 to 3,500 or 4,000 kilometers. But Agni 5, its range is now 5,000. And some reports say its range is basically 7,000 kilometers. How has the range increased? Because the weight of Agni has been reduced by about 20%. For example, the steel that was used to manufacture Agni, that has been replaced by different kind of materials which are less in weight. So less weight has been reduced by 20%, which means it can go farther. And when it goes farther, that means it can reach the entire Asia. It can reach the Europe as well. But most importantly, it can reach the northernmost part of China, which includes Beijing, the capital. Since it can travel continents, that is why we say it's an intercontinental ballistic missile. But at the same time, this Agni 5, once it is tested, deployed, it will be made part of Strategic Forces Command, which basically means it will be now under the disposal and can be used in terms and in times of the nuclear war. Who will take that decision to use Agni against China, Agni 5 against China? That decision is taken by Strategic Forces Command. It will have one political council, which is headed by the Prime Minister, and it has an executive council, which is headed by National Security Advisor, NSA. They take the decision. Basically, Prime Minister takes the decision, and ultimately the Executive Council, headed by National Security Advisor, it basically ensures that the target which is chosen by the Strategic Forces Command, that target gets hit by this Agni 5 missile. So Agni 5 has been recently tested. Its range is in the range of 5,000 to 7,000 kilometers. First thing that you should remember, how has the range increased? Range is increased because the material that is used is not steel, is now other material which is less in weight. That is why 20% reduction in the weight. When weight is less, that means this missile can travel faster. It's known as intercontinental missile because it can travel continents. It's basically a surface missile. That means it can be launched via a truck. Let's say there can be a truck on which it is mounted, and through that truck, this Agni can be fired, which can reach close to 5,000 to 7,000 kilometers. The previous Agni missiles, their range was somewhere 700 to 3,500 or 700 to 4,000 kilometers. Now this range has increased. And once it is deployed, it comes under the Strategic Forces Command, which basically will take the decision whether this Agni should be fired against China or Pakistan. And it has two committees, two councils. One political council headed by the Prime Minister, who has the control of the nuclear button. Whenever he decides, he can press the nuclear button, and then the decision will be taken exactly which target to hit. And who will implement this? Basically, an executive council headed by National Security Advisor. Okay. Now there is another topic, female leadership in government. Weighing in on the efficacy of female leadership in government. According to this article, what does Germany, Taiwan, and New Zealand have in common? These are all the countries that have women heading their governments. But when you're reading this article, you might scratch your head. Germany is no longer headed by Chancellor Angela Merkel. So why is this newspaper article talking about Germany, New Zealand, and Taiwan being led by women leaders? Can anybody tell me? Effectiveness. That is why read fully. In this article dated 24th September 2020, so this is not a recent article, although it was published last week, but this is not the latest article. This was published in 2020, September 24, 2020. At that time, Angela Merkel was still the Chancellor of Germany. So Germany, New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister, the dynamic Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Taiwan, led by women leaders, they effectively controlled, curbed the COVID-19 pandemic in their respective countries. Can we make a generalization that women leaders are more effective when it comes to crisis management? Although the sample is too small, just 3 countries, but we can make a valid assumption that yes, women leaders are effective when it comes to dealing with the crisis. Because we should not only rely on Germany, Taiwan, and New Zealand. We should rely on another study conducted by Esther Duflo and Nobel laureate Raghavendra Chattopadhyay. These individuals, Esther Duflo, a Nobel laureate, I won't call her the wife of another Nobel laureate. I can call the other person as the husband of the Nobel laureate to avoid sounding sexist. She has an individuality. She should not be known because of her husband, whoever he is, no matter how much respected he is, but that's besides the point. The point is she conducted a study. According to this study, she looked at the impact of the 73rd Amendment. And what 73rd Amendment did? It provided reservation for women in Panchayati Raj institutions. The law says not less than 1/3 of the seats in Panchayat should be reserved for women. And when she conducted a study, she realized that if women are the head of the Gram Sabha or Panchayat Samiti or Zilla Parishad, they spend money on productive things. For example, nutrition. For example, improving the standard of living of the people. Education, health. Men will spend money on, let's say, having a fantastic ceremony of a cricket tournament. They will spend money on some useless things. Having a brand extravaganza in a village, having a fair in a village, a market in a village. But it's the women leaders who are basically spending more money on productive things. So these are the 2 things right now. One, look at the women leaders of countries who handle COVID-19 pandemic effectively. Can we say that women leaders are more effective when it deals with crisis? And at the same time, look at the study conducted by Esther Duflo when she looked at the impact of 73rd Amendment, and she realized that women sarpanches are more likely to spend something more on productive things such as health, education, sanitation, security for women, livelihood opportunities for women than their male counterparts. So it is time that we implement women's reservation bill. Because look at the world. United States cannot dictate terms to us. We have had a women's president of India, Pratibha Devi Singh Patil. She was the president of India, a woman. We had a woman prime minister. We have had women chief ministers as well. Unfortunately, today, Ms. Mamata Banerjee, Didi, is the only female chief minister of an Indian state. But look at the condition of women's representation in parliament. It is declining. Women's representation in parliament is below 15%. And there are 19 assemblies in India which have less than 10% women representatives. To solve this problem, we need a women's reservation bill. But United States cannot tell us what to do. United States gave right to vote to women in 1920. Britain gave right to vote to women in 1928. India gave right to vote to women in one go in 1950, without any discrimination whatsoever. But we need to empower them more by bringing them more and more into the assemblies in the parliament. And for that, we need a women's reservation bill. For that, there is a question on your screen. Let me know what is the answer to this question. Yes, we have a female president right now. A bill to reserve 1/3 of all seats for women in the Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies is currently pending in the parliament. To implement reservation of seats for women in these legislatures, a constitutional amendment bill is not needed. %55 students are right. There should not have been a third statement here. Somehow it has been missed. We can say only 2. A bill to reserve 1/3 of the seats for women is currently pending in the parliament. This is correct. Why? Because this bill was introduced in Rajya Sabha. And this bill is right now pending in the Rajya Sabha as well. And a bill which is introduced in Rajya Sabha and is pending in Rajya Sabha, it does not lapse upon the dissolution of Lok Sabha. That means this bill survives. One such bill is a women's reservation bill. That's correct. To implement reservation of seats for women in the legislatures, a constitutional amendment bill is not required. It is incorrect because it is required. We need to amend the constitution to provide for reservation of women, whether it is 1/3 or whether it is half of the seats in legislatures. For that, we need to amend the constitution. So constitutional amendment bill is required. A, only 1 is the right answer. Correct? Okay, now there is slightly difficult question, but I'm sure you will be able to answer. I'll give you 30 seconds for this. From this topic, another question can be picked up. Measurement of women's participation in politics is a key component of which of the following indices? Which of these indices also measure what is the percentage of women in politics, so that we can say that women's empowerment has taken place? 40% students are right, which is heartening to see. Women's power index, it takes into account the participation of women in politics. Gender inequality index, one criteria is to see if there is inequality or equality in the society, whether women are there in politics or not, holding positions of power as well. Multidimensional poverty index or human development index, they do not measure women's participation in politics. So 1 and 2, B is the right answer. Perfect. Now let's look at the Tawang clash. Although we have had a discussion on this on YouTube, we have had a discussion on this in our daily videos as well. But Tawang clash specifically, what is it that you need to understand? Something happened in 2016, something happened in 2021, something happened again in 2022. The People's Liberation Army of China and Indian Army clashed. Clashed where? At Tawang. But 2022 one was slightly more serious because it led to injuries as well. Whether these are grave injuries not so serious injuries, we don't know. But the point is, at Tawang, there have been clashes between China and India multiple times in the past. But the most recent happened on December 9 at Tawang, which led to the injuries on both sides. Tawang is basically one sector in Arunachal Pradesh. And Arunachal Pradesh is claimed by China in full. When we look at line of actual control between India and China, this line of actual control is contested. We don't know what is part of India and what is part of China. Or there is a disagreement. India says this is the kind of property that we have, since this is the land that belongs to us. China says, no, this land belongs to us. So there is a contestation. But Arunachal specifically is claimed by China as a whole, that Arunachal Pradesh is part of India, part of China. In fact, there was a time when people traveling from Arunachal Pradesh to China, they were given stapled visas, including people traveling from Jammu and Kashmir to China. They were given stapled visas, not the visa stamped on the passport, stapled visas, to give them a different sense. But the point is, this Tawang is basically sacred place for Tibetan Buddhists. In fact, the 6th Dalai Lama was born at Tawang. The 14th Dalai Lama, the current Dalai Lama, when he was migrating from Tibet to India, he stayed at Tawang for some days and then he proceeded to India because he was migrating from Tibet to out of fear from China, and he basically escaped to India. Who is this Dalai Lama? Dalai Lama is not an individual, it's an institution. Dalai Lama is considered to be the spiritual head of one of the schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So if we look at Tibetan Buddhism, which is also known as Lamaism, it is one form under the Mahayana Buddhism. This Tibetan Buddhism, which is practiced in Tibet, Bhutan, it has 4 schools. One school is Gelug. The head of Gelug school is known as Dalai Lama. And Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama, he was there in Tawang for some days when he was coming to India. And the 6th Dalai Lama was born at Tawang. And China claims that Tawang and full Arunachal Pradesh is a legitimate part of China, which we contest. But the point is, what all do you need to know from this topic? When it comes to China, the one thing is for sure. China did something in 2017 at Doklam. In Bhutan, there is a tri-junction. China wanted to construct roads. India objected. And that was something forceful by India. Otherwise, India was always reactive. It was reacting. But this time, India is now acting, crossing Bhutan and forcing the Chinese authorities not to construct roads or infrastructure in Doklam because it is part of Bhutan. China was claiming Doklam to be part of China. So Doklam happened. Then in April and May 2020, Galwan happened, which led to the death of 20 Jawans from Indian side and countless Jawans from the Chinese side. They don't even agree. They don't even reveal what is the number of their Jawans who were killed in these Galwan clashes. But what happened in Galwan was in Ladakh area. And there we have implemented some sort of disengagement. Now, what is this disengagement? Listen to me carefully. For example, this is India, this is China, and this is the line of actual control. Although this is not a border, this is the line of actual control. We have agreed that we will resolve our border dispute without changing it unilaterally. We will first decide and then implement this. China is entering into the Indian side, which means China has now reached here. So basically, China is violating status quo. China is trespassing into the Indian side, coming into the Indian side, and then it is negotiating with India. And then we say, let's implement status quo. This is what critics say. Critics say what India is doing right now, it is not handling China properly. Why? Because China is crossing the line of actual control into the Indian side, and then we engage with China. We say basically what we will do, let's have a status quo. Basically what we will do, let's not get into further confrontation with each other. China says, okay, let's agree. So if it is Galwan, if it is hot springs, we will maintain buffer zone. What is buffer zone? Basically, this is buffer zone. Neither India nor China will be part of this area. India will be pushed here. China remains where it was. So the part which was part of the territory of India is now a buffer zone, which means we are giving away or gifting a part of our territory to China by negotiating with them. You can't be negotiating with China because China is expansionist. That's what some critics say. This was happening in Ladakh. And now China has moved eastward into Arunachal Pradesh, which means China is opening two fronts to attack India at a time when the world is busy looking at what Russia is doing in Ukraine, which basically means China is now trying to utilize this opportunity. China now realizes if world could do nothing to Russia, the world can do nothing to us as well. So we will try and alter the line of actual control with India by opening two fronts on the eastern part as well as in Ladakh. In fact, people of Ukraine, Kyiv basically, they are worried about a nuclear attack because Putin has gone berserk. He's basically threatening nuclear war, nuclear weapons on Ukraine. Long story short, what is happening along the line of actual control between India and China? Pratap Banu Mehta basically argues that China has always looked at India from American perspective. China will look at India, is India closer to United States or is India closer to other European countries? That will define what will be China's attitude towards India. So if India is becoming closer to United States of America, if India is now becoming part of Quad, if India is becoming part of the Western lobby, according to China, China will look at India always as an adversary. That is why we should not believe in this concept of Hindi Chini bye-bye. There can be no relationship or no peaceful negotiation with China. That's what one argument is. Another argument is you can't deal with China unilaterally. So through military means you can engage with Pakistan because Pakistan is weaker, but you can't engage China like that. So you need out of the box settlement to deal with China. That we will discuss in mains-based current affairs. But what is it that you need to understand from this topic? Let's look at the question. Arrange in chronological order, earliest first creation of states in India. Manipur, Nagaland, Sikkim, or Arunachal Pradesh. Tell me fast, what is the right answer? %27% students are right. Nagaland was created in 1963. Then Manipur was created in 1972. Sikkim was created in 1975. Sikkim previously was admitted into India as an associate state in 1974, but as a full-fledged state, it was part of 1975. Then Arunachal Pradesh, which was previously known as NEFA, Northeastern Frontier Agency. Arunachal Pradesh became a full-fledged state in 1987. So the correct option is 2, 3, 1, 4. First it was Nagaland, then it was Sikkim in 1975, Manipur, and then Arunachal Pradesh. Now this is C, 2, 1, 3, 4. First is Nagaland, then it is Manipur, then it is Sikkim, then it is Arunachal Pradesh. Sorry, the correct answer should have been C. C is the correct answer. C is the correct answer. It was wrong poll. Sorry. Okay. Question number 10. Which of the following states have English as their official state language? I'll give you 15 seconds for this. %68% students are right. So in Arunachal Pradesh also we have English as the official language, state language. Meghalaya also, apart from English, we have Khasi, Garo as the other official languages. In Mizoram also, in Nagaland also, in Sikkim also, in Tripura. In Tripura we have English, you have Bengali as well as the other official language. In Assam also, you have English as one of the state languages, apart from Assamese. So D, all of the above is the right answer. Topic 9, related to Assam Accord, citizenship case listed for January 10. Now, Constitution Bench is hearing the validity of Citizenship Amendment Act, as well as the amendment which was made to the Citizenship Act in 1985, which added Section 6 capital A to the Citizenship Act. There was a problem in Assam, and that problem was related to the illegal migration. And a movement was led from 1979 to 1985 in Assam by various student organizations in Assam. And the principal student organization was ASU, All Assam Students Union. They wanted all the illegal migrants to be deported back to Bangladesh or in other parts of the world, but not in Assam, because you're changing the demography, you're changing the culture, the identity of the Assamese people. And ultimately, this problem was resolved through Assam Accord. Government of India, led by Rajiv Gandhi, the government of Assam, and the representatives of ASU, All Assam Students Union, they've signed an accord, a peace treaty known as Assam Accord in the year 1985. And basis this Assam Accord, the Citizenship Amendment Act was passed. Basically, Section 6 capital A was added to the Indian Citizenship Act of 1955. According to this act, all those who have come to Assam before 1st of January 1966, they are the citizens of Assam, we don't have a problem with them. But all those who have come to Assam between January 1st, 1966 till 24th March 1971, they're also the citizens of India, but they will not be part of the electoral rolls for 10 years. That means for 10 years, they cannot contest elections, they cannot vote. But whoever has come to Assam after 24th March, that means 25th March onwards, we will have to identify them, arrest them, and deport them. Why? Because 25th March 1971, Operation Searchlight was launched by Pakistani army. So there was a crisis in East Pakistan, which is today's Bangladesh. There was a movement which called for the liberation of Bangladesh. India helped those rebels who rebelled against Pakistan. And ultimately, to identify those who are rebelling against Pakistan, Pakistani army started Operation Searchlight and committed horrific human rights violations. Fearing Pakistani army, millions of people migrated from what is today Bangladesh to India, and some of them went to Assam as well. And the agitation in 1979 was basically targeting those illegal Bangladeshi immigrants. Now the question was, we need to identify them, arrest them, and deport them. And that was the principal agenda of the Assam Accord, for which Citizenship Amendment Act was passed. Section 6 capital A was added, which basically means all those who have come to Assam after 25th March, on or after 25th March 1971, those are to be identified, arrested, deported. That is why NRC was conducted in Assam. Only in Assam, National Register of Citizens. Very close to 1.97 million voters were declared that you are not the citizens of India. But whoever has entered Assam between 1st January 1966 till 24th March 1971, you are the citizens of India, but for 10 years you will not have any voting rights. For 10 years you cannot contest elections. After that you can contest elections, you can vote in the elections as well. And specifically, one more thing, one important thing. Clause 6 was added to Assam Accord, which basically said there should be constitutional, legislative, administrative safeguards. For whom? Those who are Assamese people, legitimate Assamese. That is why the Chief Minister of Assam has set up a committee to identify who are the original Assamese Muslims, so that we can separate them from what he calls the Bangladeshi Muslims. And this committee has identified that there are Muslims such as Gorias, Morias, Deshis, who are not Bangladeshi origin, who are legitimate, genuine, original Assamese people, who have had no history of migration in the last 200 years. For them, we will have special safeguards. Those who are the genuine Assamese people, we will have special safeguards for these people. That is part of the Assam Accord. This will be challenged in the Supreme Court, and on January 10, Supreme Court will decide to hear these cases. Whether Citizenship Amendment Act is constitutional, which was passed in 2019, and whether this Section 6 capital A of 1985, whether it is constitutional, because it gave right to an illegal migrant who illegally entered Bangladesh, who illegally entered Assam before 24th March 1971 to become the citizen of India. Whether it is constitutional or unconstitutional, that's for the Supreme Court to decide. The point is, Assam Accord talks about illegal migration into Assam. If you have entered Assam after 24th March 1971, you are illegal migrant, we have to identify and deport you. But if you are an illegal migrant who has entered between January 1966 till 24th March 1971, for 10 years, you will not have voting rights. After that, you will have the voting rights. Whether this is constitutional to give citizenship to illegal migrants, that's for the Supreme Court to decide. And whether it is constitutional to provide citizenship on the basis of religion, as was done by Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, that will be decided by the Supreme Court on January 10. Clear? Now we have a last topic, friction between government and the judiciary. And this is something that you know, how the judges are appointed. Basically, India is the only country in the world where judges are appointed by themselves, based on a system known as collegium. So I'll not focus on collegium, I'll focus on some other issue. For example, issues have been raised regarding the vacation or the holidays taken by the Supreme Court. For example, Supreme Court is going on winter break. Supreme Court of India works for 193 days in a year. High courts, they work for 210 days in a year. If we look at the trial courts, they work for about 245 days in a year. Since there is a tussle between executive and the judiciary on judicial appointments, the Law and Justice Minister, Mr. Kiran Rijiju, is attacking the collegium system, attacking the Supreme Court. In fact, his first address to Rajya Sabha as the Vice President of India, the new Vice President of India used his first speech to basically instigate parliamentarians. What are you doing? 2015, the Supreme Court declared the law passed by you as unconstitutional and you could do nothing. Basically instigating the members of the parliament. So there is a full-blown tussle between executive and judiciary on judicial appointments. And now there are voices within the government who are now criticizing the judiciary for taking so much vacation. For example, Supreme Court of India, it goes on vacation for summer break. Summer break of about 45 days. Winter break for about 15 days. Then there is a holy break for about a week. Then 5 days each on Diwali and Dussehra. So the government is basically saying if you go on leaves for all these times, for these many days, it's basically hampering judicial system. And that is why we see the pendency of the cases high. There are those who are in favor of these breaks. There are others who are against. Whose side are you on? If you are speaking in favor number one, basically judges don't chill during these times when they are on a break. They basically utilize this time to write judgments. They've heard lots of arguments during the working period, and now they want to apply their calm mind to write judgments. So they spend the time when the vacation is going on to write judgments. That is why there is no problem in Supreme Court taking these many breaks. That's argument number one. Argument number two, it's not that Supreme Court does not function. There are vacation benches set up. Vacation benches, if there is a summer break of 45 days, that doesn't mean Supreme Court will not function. We will have 2 judges or 3 judges who will still work during this period. And for that, we will set up a vacation bench. That means a bench hearing a case, although it is on vacation. 2015, when Supreme Court declared that NJAC is unconstitutional, it was basically on a summer break. It was a vacation bench. 2017, when Supreme Court declared triple talaq as invalid, it was basically a vacation bench which decided this matter. So it is not that Supreme Court is on a vacation and it will not work. It is working by setting up vacation bench. But this time, when the government and the judiciary was in conflict with each other, judiciary is now protesting against some of the speeches made by the law minister. This time, the Chief Justice, Justice Chandrachud, has said there won't be any vacation bench this time. We will go on a leave. So another tussle with the executive. Argument in favor of the judges is that unlike others, they don't take breaks. They meet 10:30 a.m. in the morning till 4 o'clock. They hear the cases. After that, they do research. For example, till 3 a.m., midnight, the former Chief Justice of India, Justice Deepak Misra, was hearing the mercy petition of Yaqub Memon. Look at me carefully. A terrorist convicted by the Supreme Court, who was sentenced to death by the Supreme Court, he filed a mercy petition with the President Pranab Mukherjee, who rejected this mercy petition. There were people who challenged the rejection of the mercy petition. They approached the Supreme Court. Supreme Court heard this matter till 3 a.m. in the morning. One of the judge was the then Chief Justice, Justice Deepak Misra. And the very next morning, 10:30 a.m., he was back in the Supreme Court. Unlike our ministers or legislators who will take a week to recover from their midnight work. That is why there is no problem with taking vacations by the Supreme Court. In fact, this year, 29,000 odd matters were listed before the Supreme Court. And you would be surprised that 25,000 of them have been disposed of by the Supreme Court. And if you compare it with United States Supreme Court, they hear 100 to 150 matters in a year. So despite all these vacations, Indian Supreme Court is functioning properly, functioning well. But then there are others who are against this, saying it leads to pendency of cases and it is a colonial hangover. Colonial hangover in the sense, these were the European judges who were working in India. They could not bear the extreme heat of the summers and they would go out, take a vacation, go out back to Europe, back to Britain during the summer period. That used to be their vacation. So if you want to get rid of the colonial hangover, we need to reduce the number of vacations. We need to reduce the number of leaves. That's the tussle between government and the executive, government and the judiciary. Now you'll have to tell me what is the right answer to this question. %46% students are right. Kiran R. and Stephen, they're the toppers for today. 99 Constitutional Amendment Act is related to NJAC. 100 Constitutional Amendment related to India-Bangladesh Land Boundary Agreement. 101st Constitutional Amendment Act is related to GST. 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act is related to giving constitutional status to National Commission for Backward Classes. EWS reservation is basically 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act. So B, only 2 pairs is the right answer. That was it about today's discussion. We discussed close to 10 topics, primarily from the prelims perspective, starting with the Committee to Protect Journalists. Then we discussed, what did we discuss? The second topic was related to Belagavi dispute. Then we looked at the zonal councils. Then we looked at the Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill 2021. Then the fifth topic was on Bepur Uru. Then the sixth topic was on Agni 5. Then the seventh topic we discussed what? What did we discuss? What was the seventh topic? The seventh topic was related to female leadership, the efficacy of the female leadership. Eighth, we discussed the Tawang clash. Ninth, it was related to the Assam Accord. And 10th, the friction between the executive and the judiciary. And if you like the session, let me know. You just have to rate the class for me to check. I'll see you when I see you next. Till then, have a great time. Stay safe. Good night. And or for the SMEs to answer.